Welcome to the Trust Factor Radio, bringing you interviews and insights to unlock the power of the subconscious mind to create authority, credibility, and trust. With your host, the Authority Architect and best-selling author, Neil Howe.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, and today my special guest is Robert McNulty. And Mr. McNulty is currently the founder and CEO of Tryp Technologies, Inc. It is a rideshare technology company that is a disruptor in the business sector. He is an accomplished entrepreneur with over 40 years of significant experience in specialty retail, e-commerce, branded consumer products, startups, and developing new concepts and technology platforms for utilization of the consumer. Mr. McNulty founded Shopping.com and served as its president and CEO. Shopping.com was the world's first online retail selling a comprehensive range of consumer brand name products on the internet in 25 major categories and offering 2 million SKUs while utilizing comparison shopping engines to drive sales. Shopping.com was acquired for $220 million in all-cash transaction by Compaq Computers. And now Mr. McNulty is using his experience and founding another company under Tryp Technologies. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Neil. Appreciate you inviting me.
Well, give us a little bit of a background on Tryp Technologies, because it started up in the rideshare industry, but now it's more in the delivery under Tryp Delivers. Give us a little bit of that backstory there.
Yeah, so what happened was I didn't know anything about the rideshare industry up until about 4 years ago. I'd never been in an Uber or Lyft, and then by circumstance, my son and I were going to a business meeting. He had to drop his car off at a dealership. So we took this car and I kept asking my son, where's the car going to pick us up so we can go to our meeting? Because I like to be punctual. And he said, don't worry, Dad, I got this. So then I asked him again, and then he pulls out his phone and he shows me, he says, see that little car that's moving? I go, yeah. He said, that's our car. And I go, what? How is that our car? And then literally 10 seconds or 15 seconds later, it pulled up right in front of us and we jumped in. And that's how I got a look at the rideshare industry. And then because it was so convenient, I started using it all the time in Vegas here. And, but then you started hearing the problems from the driver perspective. And if you don't have happy drivers, you're not going to have a happy client who is the recipient of the ride, right? So that kind of triggered me to look at the business model, but I had no intentions in going into it. I was just curious. And over about an 18-month program or process with me, I started thinking about, geez, I could do this. I mean, you just got to change the model. You know, you got to put more money in the driver's pocket, lower the fares for the consumer. In other words, surge pricing was an issue, I thought. And I thought the way that the drivers were being treated, not just economically treated, but they weren't valued for their information. And every car I got in, when I probably talked to, 30, 40, 50 drivers over time, it was always the same stuff. One is they don't respect us, we do this and that. And then the money thing came. So I just, one day was really thinking about it, started doing some research, and then said, geez, what this business needs is to figure out how to put more money in the driver pocket, how to make a little bit, start looking at it from a retail perspective, squeezing the margins down, squeezing the operating expenses down, and then could you come up with a disruptive business model? And that's kind of how we got started. We were going to go in the rideshare space. We started building out our technology and it became more complicated than the tech guys I'd hired. And so we had a number of false starts. But we finally, we're up and running now. Everything's, tier one, it's all enterprise. But we made a pivot because of COVID. We were getting ready to launch in January, in February timeframe. We were going to do a beta launch on just rideshare. Then COVID hit. And then, and we were always going to go in the grocery and the pickup business and the restaurant business, but it was going to be our second part of the dance we're put together. And so we decided to pivot. And then we spent the last 5 months putting the restaurant programs together. And we finally launched, in the last couple of weeks, we launched in Nashville, and now we're looking at other multiple markets we're going to start going after, around the United States.
Excellent.
So it's been a long journey.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of money in both those markets. We look at Uber and Lyft, which are multi-billion-dollar companies, and it seems like they are getting the majority of the money in their business model. But if you can't keep, well, one, the consumers happy, and two, your workers, which are the drivers, then you've got a problem. But there's interesting numbers that I've heard you talk about recently. About the industries, which are the restaurant industry now, which are having some problems, as well as the grocery industry. Can you take us through some of the issues? Or, well, first of all, tell us some of the numbers for the restaurant industry, just how big is it and what portion of that is delivery? And, what kind of problems are they experiencing with the likes of Uber Eats and Grubhub and DoorDash, Postmates, all these other companies?
Yeah, right. So if you look at which is an interesting business, is the grocery business and how it actually intersects with the restaurant business. So food consumption, if you look at those two in that sense, restaurants and grocery, that's about $1.6 to $700 billion a year in the United States. And our GDP is like 21 trillion. So you can see it's a significant part of our GDP. And if you look at that number and you said, what happened with, pre-COVID, everything's rocking and rolling. And there are a lot of issues also inside the restaurant industry, the way the menus are marked up and controlled by the rideshare companies. So there's a real big dislike for that. So when you start looking at that and you said, wow, it's $1.6 trillion to $1.7 trillion, how much of those would be deliveries? How many, would it be 5% of the business, 10% of the business? Restaurant business is growing at 35-40% a year right now on deliveries, and groceries is on full steam ahead. And I don't think that's going to change that much once COVID's over. I think people will be conditioned to getting groceries delivered and getting more and more food delivered out of restaurants. So when you look at the issues and you say, geez, you're now talking about an industry that's, delivery alone, it's got to be somewhere between 60 and $100 billion. That's a huge industry. And what happened when COVID hit, remember the shelves were empty and you couldn't get toilet paper. What happened, the disruption of the supply chain, not just because people were hoarding, but restaurants were closed. So they couldn't, people are still going to eat, right? They got to eat. So the restaurants are closed. So where are they going? They're going back to the retail stores, the grocery stores, the small mom and pop markets, the 7-Elevens, whatever. And that supply chain is being disrupted. And that's why it's taken 6 months. Now you start to see shelves are full and the disruption is pretty much over on that. But that opportunity is still there, and that's still going to grow at an exponential rate. That's not going to slow down. So we made a decision to get in that space and not worry about the rideshare for now. And although we are set up, we could do rideshare tomorrow morning if we wanted to. But really, we're set up for deliveries and grocery pickup and deliveries.
Well, it seems like a good decision. And like you said, people are forming habits now, getting their groceries delivered, getting their meals delivered, and they will come to rely on that. So I see that skyrocketing in the years to come. Let's talk about the restaurant industry right now. They have services available to them like Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, Postmates. What kind of issues are the restaurants having with these companies, and talk about their business model versus Tryp Delivers?
Yeah, our business model is totally different than everybody else that's in the space. And if you read through any white papers, and there's plenty of them online to read, you can see immediately the problems. And the problem in the restaurants is that they get charged money and they also get their menus marked up. So there's a combination of pricing that goes on by Uber Eats or any of the other Grubhub or those guys. So the restaurateurs really don't like the business model, but they can't do without the business. They still got to serve up food and get their efficiencies going, particularly with COVID, because a lot of the retail restaurants have limited patronage, or they have none at all in the stores or in the restaurants. So the only way they can keep their business up and running and pay their bills is to do outsourcing of third parties. So we looked at the business, said, again, just taking our business model and said, hey, we're a SaaS business model. Let's just charge the drivers kind of the same pricing that we're going to do in the rideshare, but let's go to the restaurant and just do a flat fee pickup and delivery. So while the other providers for delivery charge anywhere from 20 to 40%, sometimes more, it's all hidden in the receipt. The driver doesn't see the receipt that the consumer sees. The restaurateur doesn't see the receipt that this other person sees. So ours is very transparent. All our line items line up for everybody to see. We have a membership program. So if you're a member restaurant, we charge you $2 a pickup and delivery. And if you're a non-member, we charge you $3. So you can save, the dollar per delivery probably very quickly, just if you're doing 15 to 20 deliveries a day. Not that we're going to get all the deliveries a day. We don't expect that, but we do expect that over time, we'll be able to, get into the market share business with these guys, because the power of having a reduced price for the restaurateur that's significant. It's not like a little bit, it's like 75% cheaper. Will drive revenue growth to the side. And if you look at most disruptive business models, whether it's in where you are, like one Home Depot, for example, which was really disruptive back in the day when they started, and to this day, they're still disruptive. And it's just not the pricing model. It's the configuration of service in their business, the configuration of other product lines that they've added, like kitchen cabinets and decor and all those kinds of things. So they've evolved their business to stay disruptive ahead of the competition. Same thing is going to happen here. If you look at almost all businesses, particularly when it's like retail, and I consider rideshare, all this kind of stuff we're doing is customer driven. So it's more of a retail play. But if you look at the Costco's of the world and people like that, you see their competitive edge that they've had since day one. As long as the company is staying in front of the game, nobody can beat them. It's only when they don't stay in front of the game that they beat themselves, actually.
Right. So I'm going to put you on the spot here and maybe do some math, which is never a good thing in an interview. Yeah. But from a restaurant owner's point of view, how much are they actually saving with a $2 to $3 delivery flat fee rather than what they're paying right now? I mean, what are they paying right now?
Well, they're paying anywhere from 20 to 40%. So, I mean, I get them all the time. I should have brought one so I could hold it up. Receipts and like on a $40, food pickup and delivery. If it's being marked up 20, 30, 40%, you can get to the numbers pretty quick, what it costs on that order. And I have, a number of our people out in the field send me receipts all the time. Look at this order, and here's what they would have paid with us. And they go through that when they're pitching a restaurant to sign up with us. And we don't ask the restaurant to not do business with their current delivery service. We're just saying, hey, fit us into your schedule. And we don't mark up your menus and things like that. So we have about 150 restaurants online that we just put up in Nashville. We'll start working the other side, getting our app out there and getting, download the app in the marketplace and start utilizing it. But the biggest thing is getting the restaurants lined up, and that's the challenge that we have, and we're just getting after it to get them signed.
All right, I'm going to do some quick math here because I want to get this straight before we move on. So if you've got a $40 meal and you're paying 20% in delivery fees, 20 to 40. So that could be anywhere from what, $8 to $16 in delivery fees that the restaurant has to pay.
Yes. So here's what here's the numbers. You've got to go into the restaurant business itself. So if you say an average restaurant is delivering between 15 and 20 deliveries a day, and if he's getting knocked around for $8 to $16, but let's just say it's $12 to $14, right? And just multiply that a day, multiply it 6 times, if they're open 6 days a week. I mean, you're talking about 70, 80, $100,000 in delivery fees they're saving with us. That makes a huge difference for a small mom and pop restaurant.
I was going to say, what kind of margins are restaurants running at? Because that's got to take a huge chunk out of their margins.
Right. And that's the whole thing. Their food cost doesn't really get covered when they start getting hammered like that. And that's the problem. So our solution was a flat fee, crunch the pricing down, and do all the other things we're doing from a disruptive standpoint. It's a SaaS business model. So there's no fare split with the drivers. The drivers get 100% of the fare. We outline exactly what that means. So there's no hidden agenda with us. It's just full transparency on every line item. So the consumer sees it, the driver sees it, the restaurateur sees it. So there's nothing left to wonder.
All right, so let's move on to the drivers. I want to come back to the restaurants in a minute and find out how they can get signed up, because I'm sure once they hear the savings that they can make, they're going to want to know how they get signed up and how they can get started. But let's talk about the drivers, because I'm sure the drivers aren't getting that $12 to $16 delivery fee that these delivery companies are charging right now.
No, they don't. I mean, they get a portion of that, and which is interesting. Even the drivers can't tell you what percent of that they're getting. They don't know because they don't see the full receipt. So that in there lies a problem for the drivers. One of the things that we recognized early on is the driver's the backbone of this business model. So if they're the backbone of the business model, then you need to think about how do we make things better for the driver, whether it's, a better pay model or just recognition. Hey, you guys are doing a great job. And not to say the other companies don't do that. They have recognition programs too. But I think coupled with the business model itself, leaves a driver out in the cold a lot. They need to be embraced for what they do, because in the scheme of things, drivers work really hard. I mean, if you've probably taken Ubers and Lyfts and all that stuff, and been run all over the city and whatever, you can see how hard they work, and they got to get you to your place and get on to another ride. So to make the cars moving, they need to be making money. And by us charging a flat fee, whether it's $39.99 a month or $99 a month to drive, they know exactly what their monthly spend is. So it's not hard for them to figure out. The other thing we do for the drivers also in the restaurants, we issue each driver their own card processing. So they truly are independent. So their fees that they make go directly from the consumer directly to them in their bank account. We don't get in between the money. In other words, we don't control it. They sign up with us. They get issued a merchant account just like the restaurants do. So the money gets to them, pretty immediate. It's not like they have to wait a day or two. It's usually they send it out in batches every few hours.
All right, let's talk about that fee, because I'm sure that would be a hiccup for some people listening. If you're a driver for Uber Eats or Grubhub, you're not accustomed to paying any kind of fee, but they are paying Tryp Delivers to use the software. Tell me how that is different and how it is made up, and they can ultimately make more money in this business model rather than what they're used to right now.
Yeah, it's the same thing that the rideshare companies are doing with the drivers as they do at the restaurants. It's a split commission. They don't know what the value of the commission is, and you can go online and see that there's a lot of conversation about, is it 20%, 25%, whatever, 30, 40%. They don't know because they don't see the end result of the ride fare. With us, they get 100% of the time and distance, cancellation fee, wait time, and the tip. So that makes up the ride fare. So with us so let's say we call it a side hustle, but really a part-time driver, maybe you're somebody that wants to drive on Friday nights, Saturdays, and maybe a little bit on Sunday or something. And if you average $8 to $10 before tips with us, there's no money taken out of that. That's 100% for the driver. That same ride, if it was, for Uber or Lyft or any of the otother rideshare guys, that could be as much as 25, 30%. Okay. So if you take call it a $40 monthly with us, that gives you 75 deliveries a month. You probably average with tip and everything, 10, 11, 12 bucks. So, you're grossing about 750 after you pay your $39.99. So you got a $40 bill on 750 bucks. So it's opposed to probably something north of $200 to $300 that you would have paid in commissions to Uber or Lyft.
Right. So you're actually paying Uber or Lyft, or Uber Eats or Grubhub or these other delivery companies, that fee, you're just not seeing it.
Correct.
So this way you're paying a much smaller fee overall, but you are seeing it. It's this is what you're paying rather than the $200-300 that you might be paying that you don't know about.
Correct. And just think of it this way. Well, so when we go up to a full-time driver, it's $99, so it's $100 a month. But that driver could be making, I've talked to a lot of drivers that make 35, 40,000, 50,000 a year. And if you take that same scale, you're going to pay us $1,200 a year. You might have been paying, easily $4,000 or $5,000 a year in fees.
Well, I know I've got friends around here in Atlanta. They make, $200 a day delivering food.
Yeah.
So if they can increase that to even $300 a day, it just totally makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we've covered the restaurants, the benefits for them, the drivers. Obviously, they're both going to make more money. What about the consumer? Because ultimately, the consumer is paying for everything. And some of the charges that I see for a simple meal for one or two can end up $40, $50, $60 to get it delivered.
Yeah, I've been on the end of that too. I've actually ordered. When I first started ordering in, I was shocked at the pricing, but I didn't give it a second thought. It's convenient, so there's probably a little bit tagged on. But yeah, that becomes a problem with the consumer. And if you go back to rideshare originally, they had surge pricing, so it's on demand. So in your face. If you get out of a plane in LAX at 6:00 in the evening, you're going to pay 40, 50, 60, 100% sometimes more to get a car. So that mentality drifted through the whole industry. Same thing happened in restaurants. Let's get more, and let's mark it up without regard for the consumer. So the things, we, in our rideshare side of business, we never launched it, but we had no surge pricing. Same thing here is we try to encourage the customer, meaning the restaurateur customer of ours, not to mark up they don't need to mark it up because we don't mark it up. Right. So there's no markup on their menu. So they get a benefit from that because there is no markup. So they should have lower prices. Now, we can't control the restaurateur to say, hey, don't mark up your menu because you're just hurting yourself over time. You want to keep your in-store pricing the same as your delivery pricing because there's no reason to mark it up. We're not touching it or doing anything. So you should keep a consistent pricing, which over the long haul will drive more business. So if you take a $40 order and if there's a $12 bill in there, just unpack that $12. So you're going to net 10, let's say. That you don't have to charge the consumer, you're going to look better in the consumer's eyes.
Definitely. And it is all about the consumer. They don't want to be paying any more than they have to for the same service that you can get for cheaper. That's generally going to work out every day. So let's talk about the business model behind this, because you've got the restaurants, but we're not here as an Uber or a Grubhub or DoorDash or anything like that, to where you're doing millions and millions of dollars of advertising. You've got a different business model to get these restaurants signed up, to get drivers signed up, and to get the message out to the consumer. Tell us that story. How first of all, do we get the restaurant signed up?
Well, we have referral partners in the field, and also we are just starting to tap into large influencer bases where, like yourself, I don't know what your influencer base is, but if you have thousands and thousands of people that you can refer the app to, and they download the app, you'll get a residual commission off of that. So it's a refer program. We're not having any real issues signing restaurants up. I think they get it. We just signed up some really, like Firehouse Subs in Maryland. And so we're getting, pretty good. We signed up a Chick-fil-A in Nashville and things like that. So we're getting to the market. The biggest challenge really is the consumer side, get them to download the app and use it. And that's the adoption that's where we're focused on spending money. Getting restaurants, we don't need to spend any money because we have our referral partners, influencers that help us get that. So it's a little different way to go to market, but I think it will be pretty successful. It's taken us, when we lit up Nashville, it's the first time that we've lit up a market, so we're ready for anything, right? It's just, the wheels could come off. Who the hell knows? But thank God the wheels didn't come off, but they were a little shaky the first couple of days trying to load menus. And I mean, we loaded over 100 menus, and then you have to also load it through CSV files besides the static menu. So that's kind of a process, and we didn't know what to expect, and we had some people that could load a menu up, believe it or not, and get it all knocked out in 30, 40 minutes. And then we had other people that couldn't do it at all. And then we had some people in between. So it's kind of a sorting out. So that's why we just picked on one market that was, kind of a medium size. Nashville is a great market because it's very controllable for us from a size and perspective, and we can get up and start looking at issues. When we go to Atlanta, for example, or to a Houston or a Dallas, those become different metrics for us. It becomes a bigger challenge because, if we put 300 to 400 restaurants online in Nashville, it's not a big deal. But if you put on 700 or 800 or 1,000 in one of the bigger markets, you're impacted by, you have to put up 1,000 menus, and then you're doing all the other stuff. So it becomes a logistics game to a degree, and you just got to know where to focus your manpower.
Great. Well, I'm sure that's a problem that you'll be able to handle readily when all these restaurants get signed up. So tell me about the business model, because there's drivers out there that are working for Uber Eats, DoorDash, and these other companies. What is the benefit of them moving towards Tryp Delivers and trying to sign up restaurants? What do they get for getting the restaurant to sign up?
So if a driver signs up a restaurant, he gets the referral business off that through our app. So every delivery that a Tryp driver comes through there to pick up at that restaurant that he or she signed up, they make 40 cents off of. So if you're doing 10 deliveries a day, that's $4 a day times how many days are open a year. And then if they have multiple restaurants they've signed up, so you can see the residual income is pretty significant over time if they have, 10 or 11 or 12 or 50 restaurants. But, we'll probably have, a great number of them will have 2 to 3 restaurants. So they'll make up a little residual income off that. It's a program that's incentivized, obviously, to go out and sign up a restaurant. Actually, we're just working on a little video to give them, we've given them scripts, but if we just decide, let's make a little video so they can just show it to the restaurateur. One of the problems, and you're probably aware of this, the restaurateur or the manager of these restaurants work really hard too. I mean, that business is, you got to be switched on when customers are there, or if there's no customers and they're doing, deliveries, then they're switched on 8, 10, 15 hours a day and they're cooking, right? Like we just signed up a ghost warehouse. We call them ghost warehouse. It's a branded product, but it's a kitchen that has over 20 different menus. So it looks like, and they're all named different, so looks like they have 20 different restaurants. So, we signed up a couple of those actually, and it's going to work out fine. But it was, again, logistically, how do we load all their menus and get them up and running and all that stuff. So,
yeah.
But the drivers themselves, if they go out and turn on a restaurant, they'll get residual income out of that. And it's automatic because it's built into their referral code in the app.
Okay, so we got the drivers that they wanted to drive for Tryp Delivers, but ultimately we need the restaurants to get signed up first. So how about consumers? How are you going to get the consumers to start downloading and using the app?
So that, like I said, is the biggest challenge. We are actually working with a company in the UK that it's kind of interesting. They're really, really great at messaging, and we've talked to a lot of people in the States and all over, and we were referred to these guys, and we've had multiple phone calls, and they get where we're coming from. And because when you're trying, they were telling me about an ad you're probably familiar with, maybe that was 20 years ago or 25 years ago in the UK, where they used to advertise before the ad would come on so people would stay tuned for the ad.
Right.
And it was about coffee, but they turned the coffee message into a couple talking, right? And then you didn't know were they going to hook up, or were they going to fall in love with the coffee? And they were explaining this to me, but they used humor with it, right? And it was one of the best, ads ever in the UK. And those are the kind of things that I'm looking for, our company is looking for, is some humor to what we're doing, because it's just not all blood and guts, out there. It's nice if you can have some humor with your business model. You've probably seen Dollar Shave Club, people like that have done really well with humor.
Uh-huh.
So that's what we're looking for, to get the app out there, and I think people will respond to it. We just working through the message now.
Of course, restaurants out there tend to have a lot of people on their social media. Is there any benefit for them contacting those people on their social media and telling them to download the Tryp app?
Yeah, they get a referral piece also. The restaurateur does. We're working with them. We're tagging all of the restaurants that we've signed up, on social media, Facebook and Instagram, and we follow them. They follow us back. We're starting to get communications. Once we get really rolling in these markets, then we'll have coordinators working within those markets on the social media side with all these companies, and where we will show them how to go get, and which is kind of surprising to me too. Almost all of these sites in restaurants have a few thousand customers on them, and some even have as high as 8,000 or 10,000. Now that doesn't mean they're all in their restaurant eating, because some are do a beautiful job of food prep and how it looks and the healthy thing and all that stuff. So all of that stuff matters too, that whole messaging that comes out of the restaurants. So we want to tag in with them. And that's the other reason we want to use humor, because it allows us to do more than just a straightforward kind of ad.
Well, it's definitely a very exciting time for Tryp Delivers. Just opened the Nashville market. I hope Atlanta is going to be one of the next markets. Hopefully we can do something to make that happen.
It's on our radar. Actually, we have a meeting on that later this week. We've been talking about it a lot internally. We have a couple of referral partners already working in that market. I think they've got 15 or 16 restaurants already signed up in Atlanta. So we just got to power in the people and go after it and light it up. Excellent.
Well, if restaurateurs want to find out about how they can sign up, how do they do that?
They can go to our website, trypdelivers.com, and then we have two websites. One is the regular website for the referral partners, which is trypdelivers.com. And then we have also the restaurant site where the restaurants are on, and that's mytrypdelivers.com. And that's where you'll find the restaurants and all the other stuff that we're doing. But yeah, they can go to the App Store and download the consumer app.
Okay, and for the drivers and consumers, is that just the same thing? Go to the App Store and download the app?
Yeah. So we have a driver app, which is separate of the consumer app, and it just says driver on it. And then you download that, and then it literally takes somebody about 5 minutes to fill out the information. We still do a background check, even though it's food delivery. But it takes maybe, you have to put your driver's license, insurance card, and things like that. And then we use some pretty sophisticated technology on background search. So we can get you in and out. Probably takes 4 or 5 minutes to load your stuff in. probably takes another 2 or 3 minutes to get back to you from the background check. That's how quick it is.
Excellent. Well, I'll leave links in the show notes here as well to where people can go and get signed up and started using Tryp Delivers. There's obviously benefit to the restaurants, to the drivers, and of course to the consumers as well. Well, Bob, this has been excellent, great information. I'm glad you're putting yourself in a position where you're really helping people on the restaurant side, because they've experienced so many problems, so many shutdowns during COVID, and they need something positive to help them bounce back. But, for the driver side and the consumers as well, it's obviously helping them too.
Well, we have that little motto, going places, doing good. So that's what we look to do with our customers, whether it's the driver, the restaurateur, or the consumer.
Excellent. Well, if there's any final words you would like to share with the audience before you go, what might that be?
No, I would just encourage them, when they hear about Tryp Delivers in their market, to give us a fair shot and take a look at it. We'll save them money, and hopefully they'll have a great experience. And I appreciate you asking us, now that we're brothers, from Scotland.
That's
it's
right.
Wonderful.
Yeah, got that Scottish heritage.
Yes.
Great stuff, Bob. Well, thank you very much. Bob McNulty, the CEO of Tryp Technologies. Thanks for sharing your message on this Trust Factor Radio today.
Hey, thanks, Neil. And when I'm down to Atlanta, I'll look you up. We'll grab a cup of coffee.
Definitely. And to our listening, and to our listening audience, if you like what you hear, hit that like button, share, and we'll see you next time on the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Neil.
You've been listening to the Trust Factor Radio with Neil Howe. To learn about the resources mentioned in the show and to listen to past episodes, go to thetrustfactorradio.com. To get a copy of the book, The Trust Factor, go to thetrustfactorbook.com. If you are ready to act now and build your authority, credibility, and trust, schedule a consultation with Neil at theauthorityarchitect.com.